Welcome to the Blue Papa YouTube series on Chinese herbs. Today we're going to be talking about Huang Qi. I want to talk a little bit about some of the basic broad differences between the types of Huang Qi that are used. What we use as Huang Qi is in Chinese often called Bei Qi, northern astragalus, to differentiate it from Jin Qi, which is hedysarum. A lot of old texts in English they would call astragalus either astragalus or hedysarum. Radix astragali su hedysarum, because both hedysarum and astragalus were plants that were used as Huang Qi in Chinese medicine. In the modern editions of the Chinese Pharmacopoeia, hedysarum and astragalus have been separated. They're now regarded as two different medicinals. They have traditionally the same effects, and throughout history they were used interchangeably. In the modern era, if you look at a textbook that breaks them down into two separate entries, you find that the traditional medicine actions are exactly the same for the two for the two items. So they're traditionally identical. But in terms of their constituents, in terms of their research and modern applications, there are some differences. And there are also some differences in terms of flavor. The product that we use in the US is almost always genuine astragalus, Bei Qi. Bei Qi is derived from one of two species of astragalus. There's a number of other species of astragalus that are used as regional medicinals in China, but they're not the official product. The official product tends to be produced around Outer Mongolia, Gansu province, Shanxi province. Most of the production is right around the Outer Mongolia, Gansu area. And generally what we use is all cultivated. The wildcrafted product is now quite rare. Wildcrafted roots are quite long. This is a wildcrafted root from Shanxi. The cultivated roots are much smaller. They're only about a foot in length or so. And they're much straighter and much tighter with a very smooth skin. The cultivated root is denser and tighter. The wild root is a little bit more open and spaced out. So these long roots are exclusively found in the wild. And it's difficult to find the wild product in trade, and even when you do find it, there's a significant problem because the people in the local area in Shanxi that go out and wildcraft it, oftentimes they'll craft as much of it as they can and hoard it, and so they'll store it in rooms for 5-6 years because the price of the wild material is just steadily rising as the supply gets more and more limited. So the people that are out there finding it, they're finding it and stashing it and then releasing it slowly over the course of years. And so they're grabbing up as much as they can, stockpiling it, and then selling it at a sort of a measured rate so that the price stays very high and it slowly enters the market. So if you ever have the opportunity to get wild astragalus, you need to make sure that it's fresh. When the root is sliced, it should have a relatively strong aroma. Now, all astragalus is the quality is related to the color. Generally speaking, the higher quality roots will be more yellow on the cross section and more fragrant. Huang Qi has a very distinctive bean-like aroma, and if you get accustomed to the aroma of Huang Qi, you can differentiate the various products on the market. This is the wild product. And the wild product has a relatively distinct circle separating the inner core of the root from the outer part of the root. And in that outer layer, that white layer, you have a lot more little holes and a lot more little spaces in there. The root is not quite as tight. In the cultivated product, that wider layer is very dense and unbroken. That inner layer, the core, is not quite as dramatically differentiated, and the core is not quite as yellow. This slicing method is a transverse slice. They're taking the whole root and they're slicing it at an angle. That transverse slice gives it a look almost similar to gansao. The slicing method that we're most used to in the US is the tongue depressor shape, where you have one long fat slice, and that's made by taking the cultivated root, pressing it, and then slicing it lengthwise so that you get one long pressed sliced root. And the main way to differentiate the quality in that one is just to pay attention to the color. The more yellow and the more fragrant, the more potent the flavor, the better the quality. This is the other item that's commonly used as Huang Qi. And this item should properly be called Huang Qi. Huang Qi, also known as Jin Qi, is hedysarum. And this is the type of astragalus that's most commonly used in Taiwan. Astragalus is generally Huang Qi is generally the most commonly used herb in Chinese medicine by volume. A lot of companies in the U.S. report that Huang Qi is their #1 selling herb by single herb. And data from Taiwan shows that Huang Qi was the #1 herb by weight imported into Taiwan. They had over 3 million kilos that they imported just in a 1-year period. I think that data came from 1998. And they discovered that most of the product that's used in Taiwan is actually Huang Qi, hedysarum, as opposed to astragalus. Astragalus, Huang Qi, is mostly used in Taiwan by granule factories. A lot of the small herb shops on the street tend to stock hedysarum instead of astragalus. And the two can be differentiated by flavor, as well as by appearance, but by appearance it takes a little bit more practice. The flavor is pretty easy to differentiate because the Huang Qi, when you eat it, it's got a purely sweet flavor. The Huang Qi, when you eat it, the flavor is a little bit more bitter. And if you try the two side by side, the flavor of the Huang Qi is much more pleasant, much sweeter. And so for Chinese medicinal soups, making astragalus chicken soup or something, generally Huang Qi is thought to be better than Huang Qi. But then for use in medicine, a lot of people prefer Huang Qi because it's a little bit more well-characterized, a little bit more well-studied, and a little bit more common in the overall use in Chinese medicine. The use of Huang Qi is really prevalent in Taiwan, but in Hong Kong and mainland China and the U.S., mostly what we're using is astragalus, Huang Qi. And for the preparation method, usually we use the crude Huang Qi when we're looking to secure the exterior, when we're looking to check sweating, when we're looking to disinhibit urination and treat swelling. And then when we're looking to guide the herb to the interior, using it for stronger spleen supplementing the spleen to control the blood, supplementing the spleen to lift yang qi. These applications, like in buzhong tang or in gui tang, these actions are best with a honey processed form. So the honey processed form is made by taking processed honey, mixing it with water, soaking the astragalus in it for a short period of time, and then stir-frying it until it becomes dry. It's no longer sticky to the touch, and it gets a deep yellow color to it. And that stir-fried, honey-processed Huang Qi, which is called Zhi Huang Qi or Mi Huang Qi, is preferred for guiding to the interior, supplementing the middle burner, using the action for like buzhong tang, for gui tang. Whereas if you're using the action for something like Yuping Fengsan, looking to check sweating, treat spontaneous sweating, or using it for Fangji Huangji Tang, using it to treat edema, then generally the crude unprocessed form is preferred. So that's a little bit of the basic overview on interesting, fun stuff about Huang Qi that you may or may not have covered in class. So come back and visit us again for our continuing series on fun things with Chinese medicine. Thanks.